All right, it is 9 a.m. and I want to welcome everybody here. We're talking about we're all here today. We're talking about the coronavirus on real estate. I want to welcome you all for attending. And I'm gonna first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna introduce my guests. Up above me on the top side, and who's next to me is Scott Startzman, realtor on Oahu, and down below me is Dylan Nonaka. I'm going to ask you guys to do a quick introduction to tell us a little bit about yourselves so everybody kind of understands. Why don't we start, Scott? Let's start with you. Why don't you give us just a really quick overview?
Essentially, I've been in the business for 17 years, since 2003. I was actually licensed on the Big Island for a little while. I lived on the Big Island, but done probably 15 years in my business here on Oahu. I was an owner with the company, top 1% sales agent on the island. I also have my own development company. So I bring the whole spectrum, not only the real estate side, condominium creation, building codes, understanding building and everything. And then I have access to the contractors and things that I bring in for kind of the whole spectrum of the platform of, buying real estate.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And I should have added in before I intro you that, you and I go way back. It's been easy. I was, you and I were doing the math. We should go dig up those old emails. It's easily 10 years. I can't remember. Yeah. So I'm really happy that you're helping out. When I send out those emails on the website, I tell people, hey, these people that I know and I trust, and I've known them for over a decade, and you're one of them. And another one who I've known for well over a decade is Dylan Nonaka. Dylan, fill us in, man. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and just let us know who you are.
I was born and raised here in Kona. My family's been here for 4 generations. My great grandparents came from Japan, so definitely born and bred here on the Big Island. And I'm actually a 2nd generation realtor. My mom was a realtor and broker. She forced me to get my real estate license when I was in college. I didn't think it was something I would do when I was a grown up, but I was a good boy, listened to my mom, and I'm very happy that I did. And it's been great. She actually recently retired, and we brought my brother into the business, so I get to work with my brother every day also. So it's a family business, and now my mom and her husband, who's also a longtime broker, have retired. We've kind of taken over, but we learned all we could ever need to know about real estate from them, and are trying to continue on the family tradition over here.
That's Dylan. That's really fantastic. That's a great story. I love that. Having that born, 4 generations on the Big Island, and you're kind of growing up where you're growing up. You're still growing. Still growing up. But I mean, here you are in your place, and I think when I feel really good when people email me and say, hey, look, I'm looking for a place on the Big Island. I feel like really, really good, frankly, to forward people to both of you guys. Dylan, from you, there isn't anything better than, that's a great story. And Scott, you've got so much experience, so it's a great feeling of confidence. So I want to thank you guys for being a part of the team, and thank you for being kind of part of this whole thing that we're trying to build over here. It's super, super, super cool. Okay, great. Yeah. So even KT agrees there. Good job, Dylan's mom. See, there you go, man. There you go. All right. So we had sent out a questionnaire for some people to ask questions ahead of time, and just kind of warm everybody up. I think this is obviously we're going to be talking about for today is specifically we're going to focus on the whole COVID thing and how it's affecting Hawaii's real estate market, or how we believe it's affecting Hawaii's real estate market. So I want to thank Scott for sending us these sort of clarifying questions ahead of time. This is really going to be what we're going to be talking about. What's going on? What do you think is going to happen? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? That's kind of where we're going to be going for today. So let's open up, and I've got this is the Big Island background over here. So this is a beautiful view of Hale Maumau crater on the Big Island at the right time. It's just an incredible place to be. If you haven't gone there, well, I think it's kind of changed now, but anyway, let's not get distracted. This is Misha from Kaimuki, and she says, is it a good time to buy land on the Big Island during this pandemic, or should I wait out? Or is there ever a best time to purchase land? So Dylan, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, of course, none of us have a crystal ball, and you could ask 10 realtors their opinion and get 10 different answers on this. But it's really going to be hard to tell until I think a couple more months to see what exactly the impact of the whole COVID impact is going to be on land prices in particular. The biggest thing you got to consider about purchasing property really on any island, but really on the Big Island also, is that there's such a limited amount of inventory. So no matter what, you're never going to see like a massive drop off in prices because there's never going to be a huge increase in supply. And there's always going to be a pretty good amount of demand of people who want to live here and people who want to buy and build and make this their home. So, you know, prices may get softer here in the next couple of months just because of the uncertainty. I personally believe that even if things open back up pretty quickly in June across the country, it's going to be a while until the economy starts getting back to normal here in Hawaii, because it's such a tourism-based economy that the tourists aren't going to come back all of a sudden. We're not going to go from, you know, almost zero visitors. We're in the hundreds right now, you know, 100 or 200 people coming in on planes a day back to the normal number of about 30,000. So that's going to take months to totally fully recover. I think over the next couple of months may take longer than other markets. So that's definitely going to play into prices. But you know, it's hard to tell. To say, hey, you should wait a month, or you should wait 6 months, you should wait till next year. Really, if you see something that you want, there's such a limited amount of inventory, you kind of have to buy it when it's available, because it could be years before it comes up again.
Yeah, that's a great input. I think that this question is clearly a general question that could equally apply to Oahu as well. So, Scott, we just heard what Dylan said. What's your take on the way that you see kind of things going?
How I kind of see things shaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so let me take a step back real quick. When everything kind of started to change, when the market started to drop, we started having issues. The first thing I did, I got a couple of former Wall Street executives that I reached out to kind of get a national perspective. Then I called a couple of my hotel general managers who are clients of mine and said, hey, how do you guys staff? How does this affect you? What goes on? Because we kind of wanted to make some predictions here going forward. And one of the things they said was, hey, we staff based on room occupancy, based on the number of rooms. So, obviously with the number of occupancy rooms being occupied going down, they were going to cut the number of hours for employees, and they were going to try to spread that out, which means, less income, less people working. We've had to cut jobs. And it was interesting kind of seeing, what's going to go on here? We've kind of hit what's going to happen on the real estate side. And what essentially happened is once they did the stay-at-home order, a lot of homeowners didn't want people coming into their home. So I've got 4 or 5 listings. Once the stay-at-home order gets lifted, we're going to come on the market. But like Dylan was saying, we still have the 14-day quarantine in place. So the outside person coming in to view property is going to have to sit in a hotel room for 14 days. And I don't really see that making a lot of sense for people until we start to ease that, and we'll ease back into things. So, we're in a freeze mode right now because inventory has actually been dropping. There's actually less inventory on the market right now because people have been afraid to bring their homes on the market to allow people to come in. And in doing so, there's still a pool of buyers that have been buying, and the inventory has actually been dropping. So the number of new listings dropped 46% this past month, but new escrows only dropped 35%, which means it was the buying pool that was already there was eating up the inventory still. Once that stay-at-home gets lifted, then you're going to have more listings coming on. You're going to actually, on the buy side, going to have some options to choose from, because I do think the buyer demand will be diminished a little bit, but I don't think it's going to move prices downward. This thing has to take, if this thing extends out for an extended period of time, year and a half, 2 years, then you'll start to see more pricing movement. But if it's more of a short run thing, then it's not going to have as big of an impact. It's going to be very minimal.
So this is go.
One more consideration, general consideration about buying land that I always advise buyers on, because you can get really good, well-priced land on the Big Island. We have huge agricultural subdivisions where if you want to be really rural, you can get an acre of land for $10,000. Of course, that ranges all the way up to 200,000 or 300,000 for a regular 10,000 square foot building lot in a neighborhood in Kona. But the thing you really want to consider when buying land is people have a conception, because in most places you can purchase land and build a home, and when you're done, you have a certain amount of equity built in because you took the trouble of buying the land, doing the grading, getting the contractor, and all that stuff. But in the Kona market especially, the cost to build is so high that sometimes the cost of land doesn't make sense when you add on the cost to build, and you're almost breaking even back to market value because the contractors are really busy. So that's one thing you want to look at, and that's one thing that may get affected here with the economy shortly, is if the construction industry slows down and there are more contractors available, they start to lower their prices so they can pick up more jobs. That may make buying land more advantageous because you'll be able to, the cost per square foot to build will go down. And it's really been at its highest the last couple of years. And so, if you're buying a piece of land for $200,000 and it costs you $200 a square foot to build a 2,000 square foot house, you look at another $400,000, and now you got $600,000 into it. What is the market value of that property? That's kind of where, a regular 3-bedroom, 2-bath home may be priced here in the Kona side. So it's a little bit different depending on the market that you're in, but it's always something to consider with land is, what is your plan? Is it just to buy and hold? Because over the long run, that land will appreciate. But if it's to buy and build, you really want to look at the cost to build.
Go, Scott. You had a comment.
I was going to say, one of the other things too is if you're looking at a buying time frame, I do feel there'll be a little more inventory coming up here to be able to choose from. And we've always had, we're an island out in the middle of the Pacific with very limited supply and a huge global audience. So we've always had this supply-demand imbalance where limited supply, large demand. We're going to come up to a period here where the quarantine is still in effect and the stay-at-home gets lifted, where there'll be more homes that come on the market, but a more limited buyer pool. And if you look at interest rates drop by pretty much 1% once this started to happen. So if you were to look to get in, you're going to have less competition. And, on a $500,000 mortgage, the difference between 2 months ago, what your payment would be in now is about a $300 to $400 difference per month. So it actually gives you a good opportunity to not have as much competition and get in with a lower monthly payment, because most people buy based on what their monthly payment's going to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's pull up we had a question from KT, and this is kind of like for you, Dylan, but I think it kind of underscores the whole thing. And she says, planning to relocate to Kona in 1 to 2 years, wondering about the timing to sell here in Silicon Valley and what the market will be like both Silicon Valley and Kona in relation to COVID and the economy. Boy, if I knew the answer to that, Katie, I wouldn't be doing these YouTube live videos. But anyway, so Dylan, why don't you let's take a crack at that. Dylan, what's your sense? We kind of been answering that in a variety of ways, but it's a timing issue. If you're going to be buying in 1 to 2 years, what would you be doing if you were KT?
Well, first, hello out to KT and James and the Ohana. They're good friends of mine that have been coming to the Big Island for a while and are looking to relocate. So can't wait to have you guys. Again, that's a hard one in terms of exactly forecasting. We may have been, depending on that market, the time to have sold might have been 3 months ago, and we could be in a plateau or a little bit of a downturn for the next couple of years, depending on how quickly the economy returns. So that's a hard one. I think for the most part, though, that Bay Area market, I have a lot of clients from that area, and the market here somewhat mirror each other in terms of prices going up and down. So if prices drop a little bit there, they may drop a little bit here. So your relative buying power will probably stay the same. So I don't see a big divergence there in terms of, the market dropping off there and then the market going up here and then your buying power diminishes. So, I don't think that's something to worry too much about or stress out about, because again, a lot of that depends on your timing and when you're ready and when the the job situation works out. If you're going to move during the summer so the kids don't have to move in the middle of the school year, there's lots of other things that are important to consider other than the exact market timing. So, when the time is right, it'll be right. And I think for the most part, there'll be some equity in terms of the market there and the market here for selling and buying power.
Scott, you must have some clients from the Silicon Valley, or you got friends there. What's your kind of Oahu centric view of that same question?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost part of what you're talking about is selling. You're trading, right? You're selling, and whether it's one market, whether it's Mililani and buying in town, or Silicon Valley and here, you're trading across. And actually, I've got a couple of clients right now. We've been talking about this when to come on the market. For me. And some of this is splitting hairs, but if you're trading across, you're getting out and getting in the same market. So there's not really a huge strategy there. If you're getting out and then trying to get back in later on, okay, now how is one market going to be at one time and at another? I mean, part of the discussion I've been talking with my clients is we were in a really good market for the last 6 months, which is what an appraiser is going to comp you on. And I do feel we're going to have, obviously, we were in a seller's market. I think we're going to shift to a buyer's market here, and prices should soften some. And in doing so, if you go on the market now, you're actually comping out versus the last 6 months of sales, which was a good market. So you can kind of do a better job on taking your profits at this time. Where's the market going to be in 6 months? Hard to tell, but I don't think we're going to be up in prices. We may be down some, and the question is how much. So the longer you wait, there's more risk in that. But if you're getting out of one market and buying into another at the same time, you're trading across, you're buying in the same market. I don't feel there's as much concern. It's more, you got to look at each marketplace and kind of see what's going on in each market.
So thanks, Scott. So here's a question that that kind of comes to mind about this whole thing. Obviously, when we're contemplating buying or selling real estate, frankly, no matter where you are right now, but obviously we're talking about Hawaii, and we're looking at this COVID thing, and we kind of don't know what's going to happen. We really don't know what's going to happen. I just saw there was an article just today that came out that said that the visitor industry is planning on a new branding, and the branding is going to be, Hawaii is the safest place in the world. Now, I think that's brilliant, frankly. And there's one perspective that can say, look, if Hawaii gets branded as the safest place in the world, there's a good argument to say, well, that could really position us in a very, very, different place, much higher value than Hawaii's ever had before, because now it's not just right now. It's not just the most beautiful place on earth, the most desirable place on earth, the greatest weather on earth, the best people on earth. But now it's the safest place on earth. Oh, it's one more thing. So the market could go through the roof. The man could go skyrocketing, right? And I see you guys nodding. On the other hand, it's also possible that with the way our leadership is going, let's just kind of pick a doomsday scenario. Travel industry is out and no one gets on a plane, for the next year. And Hawaii's a $17 billion industry goes from, it's been, 17 billion to zero. And it's been zero for 30 days. And they just extended it for apparently another 30 days, which is going to be the end of May. By the way, I just published a video just yesterday on, 4 reasons why you should not come to Hawaii right now. And I was really torn to do that, but I had to do it. But anyway, what if this industry goes, if we don't have a visitor industry for the next 6 months, and again, this is crazy talk, but it's speculation, right? If we don't have a visitor industry for the next 6 months, Hawaii's economy is going to be destroyed, which could, everyone's going to need to leave or et cetera. So, what do you guys think on kind of, not so much kind of what's going to happen, but I mean, it seems to me that we're going in for a place where no one can really predict the future. And so if we're going to this kind of place, what is your recommendation as far as what should people be thinking and what should people be watching and doing? Scott, you spoke last. So Dylan, how about if you start off with this one? What should I be thinking? What should I be doing going into this really uncertain period? Besides hanging out with us. This is a super important,
big picture philosophical question. And it's something that a lot of people have, brought up. And Peter, you and I have been involved in some battles, politically for this over the years. But, this economy is almost totally tourism based, and there is very little effort at all, aside from just people talking and taking no action to diversify it and bring in other industries that can help support the economy. We don't have any type of manufacturing or any type of high-tech research or any type of higher education dominance in the Pacific. I mean, there's lots of places where we have a huge competitive advantage, and we don't take advantage of that because tourism is the easy answer. It's the way it's always been. And to your point about Hawaii being the safest place, that's been our competitive advantage for a very long time. I would say up until the 90s and early 2000s, the reason why people came to Hawaii was because we were part of the US. There's lots of other tropical, beautiful destinations across the world, but they came here because you didn't need a passport. It was secure, right? You weren't worried about drug cartels or crazy crime or getting ripped off. But really, since the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of places in Southeast Asia, in Mexico, in Europe that have really gotten their act together and saw the opportunity in tourism and have become more competitive because they've become safer. And quite frankly, our leadership here in Hawaii has made Hawaii a very expensive place to come. I mean, there's lots of studies out there that you can look at where it's 3 times the cost to come to Hawaii on vacation than it is in a different market. So we got to have some competitive advantage to make it make sense to come here. And that's going to be something that we're definitely going to have to do some soul searching on over the next couple of months and really look at what do we do to transform the economy and make it more sustainable, because this could be the first of many, hopefully not, but similar events in the future. And we saw Hawaii go from 3% unemployment to 37% unemployment overnight, basically. And this is truly unprecedented. We've had blips in the economy. We've had recessions before. Even 9/11, there was no air travel for 3 days, and there was long-lasting economic impact after 9/11. We're talking, like you just said, 60 days of no air travel and people not coming here. We have no idea what that long-term impact is going to be. So it's really hard to tell, and hopefully we don't just get over it and forget about it, and we really use this as a time to reflect on what we do and be smarter about how we move into the future economically.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was one of the local economists, Paul Brubaker, made a point, and one of his, I think you guys were at one of those presentations, right? He said 9/11, we were out for air travel was out for a week, and it kind of wiped out our economy. It took us how much time to recover. Now we're out for at least 30 days, maybe even more. Scott, what's your kind of tea leaf reading into where this is going, and what do we be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, where we're going, we don't have a whole lot of cases here right now. So from a local economic standpoint, I see us relaxing things and opening up more, but that's going to come with restrictions. So they already said last night, hey, restaurants, when you open, you 50% capacity, right? So even restaurants and the local businesses, from a local economic standpoint, when we do open back up, we're not going to be open at full economic capacity. We're going to kind of limp along here a little bit. I think the bigger key for us, because tourism is our number one economy, and Oahu is different from the outer islands. If you look back at Oahu during the 2008 crisis, our highest unemployment was 6%, which is actually classified as full employment. And our price drop was only about 11% from top to bottom. Outer islands hit 12 to 14% because Oahu's a little more diversified. We got the military bases, some government jobs, the financial sector and things over here. So we do operate a little bit differently than the outer islands. Outer islands are more dependent on tourism. But I think that tourism component is the key. So what is the state going to allow us to do? What are our leaders going to allow us to do? When are they going to deem it safe to be able for tourists to come back in here, meaning people from the outside? And they've talked about testing and vaccine. Vaccine, we're looking at 2 years out. Testing, we're looking at a minimum year or more to be able to ramp up on that. And if those are the two key components to be able to relax things to get back to our normal, we're going to limp along here for a little while. And the longer that happens, then the bigger impact on our economic side, which means it's going to have a bigger impact on the housing side.
Yeah, that's very well said. And really, as we're talking about this stuff, I thought I'd bring up KT's question. What's your gut feeling about lifting the 14-day quarantine in June? I wonder if your governor will extend it. We want to look at properties as early as the last week in June. Uh, Dylan, you work with that. You work with KT a lot. How do you respond to her question? Your mic is muted.
Yeah, Peter, I think you might have some insight on this in terms of the curve. I know you've been tracking this daily and you got some good graphs and data. The question is what is the standard going to be? We don't know yet. Is it no new cases for 2 weeks? Is it single digit cases in 2 weeks? I mean, they haven't really put out a standard in terms of when we're going to be deemed safe enough to reopen. So at this point, I know the cases have been slowing down dramatically, and even on Kauai, it's been 2 weeks since Kauai has had a new case. So that's good news, but that's the question: is at what point do we say that the data is showing us that it makes sense for us to open back up? And that seems like it's going to be left up to each state. I don't know if there's going to be federal guidance on that, but yeah, it's hard to tell. It's up to the government to figure that out.
I have to agree with you, and really, it's really hard to say. And the reason why it's really hard to say is because, yeah, I have been tracking almost, I think my inner OCD took over. And for about a week and a half there, I was doing it every single day until finally it was like the number was like the same every day, like 2 or 3 more, 4 cases more. So I said, okay, I'm just going to do this once a week now. So we're down to like next to nothing right now. We're looking at, I think like 5 extra cases the other day, 2 or 3. And this is 2 or 3 extra cases in a state of, 1.4 million people, or on Oahu, 1 million people. This is nothing. So there's not a whole lot of a case to be made that it's no longer safe here. But I think on the quarantine question, I think culturally, what we're all kind of freaking out about, right, is like, well, wait a minute, what about those incoming people who may have the virus and they could kind of reintroduce it and kind of the whole thing over there? And I spoke about that on the video yesterday. There's a lot of resistance to that. So, if I had to if I had to put money on a bet, I would say that they're not going to lift the quarantine on incoming visitors until there's a definitive way to do some kind of testing, prior to travel. And I've seen some things mentioned, and I think, frankly, I really see, in my view, what I see kind of happening here is sort of just like when 9/11 changed everything of the way you checked into an airport. You can no longer drive up to the thing. You have to go through security. I think this is going to have the same effect. I think you're going to go into an airport 3 hours earlier. You're going to check into there's going to be a nurse station somewhere. You're going to give a couple of drops of blood, and you're going to wait till the test results come through, and you're going to get called back, and you're going to stamp through, and your boarding pass is going to have some sort of a stamp on it, which means you've been blood tested and you do not have the virus, or you've been blood tested and you have antibodies, which means you're safe, and off you go. And they're only going to allow people on the airplane that either have antibodies or do not have infection, so that there's no way that the aircraft's going to have anyone. And frankly, I think if you can do that, I think it would make Hawaii in some ways extraordinary. An extraordinary place. I'd like to, for example, Dylan, you made a really good point that, Hawaii is very expensive. It's 2 to 3 times the cost of going somewhere else. And I'm going to make a counter argument. I'm going to say, you know what? It should be 10 times as much to come over here, right? Let's go way upscale, right? Let's go way, way, way upscale. Let's make it super expensive. Handful of people, come on, very high quality, very, very exclusive. Anyway, that's just a crazy argument. But anyway, that's my gut. Any of you guys want to kind of have a follow-up comment on what we just got to talking about? Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I kind of wonder from a national perspective, in any place that you live, is there going to be fear for a little while of saying, hey, someone coming in from the outside, traveling wherever it is, there's going to be some concern. Hey, we understand what our community is like, but we can't control that outside element. We don't know where you've been coming from. We don't know what you've been exposed to, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's the biggest concern. My gut's telling me sometime this summer they'll try to figure something out. with tourism being the number one economy, there's going to be pressure, especially when we're at 37% unemployment. Okay, we get out of the stay-at-home portion, which does not get rid of the quarantine. It opens us locally, but you're limping along at that point. And in doing so, okay, where does the unemployment rates land? 20%, in the teens? That's still very high. And there's going to be significant pressure to start allowing the tourists back in. And so what is that balancing effect? And my gut tells me kind of sometime mid to late summer. But it all depends. It hits exactly on what you said. My gut tells me prior to even going to the airport, maybe a couple of days ahead, you're going to have to get some kind of testing and a certificate of some kind to show that you're good. But same concept, right?
Yeah. And that's definitely an advantage that Hawaii has, right? Is your only port of entry is from an airplane. So there is a way to corral people and test them. It's not like the regular US where people can be driving in and coming on trains and doing all kinds of stuff. So we actually have a competitive advantage there if we can figure out a way to take advantage of it. And like Scott said, there's going to be a lot of pressure. Our government's going to have to figure something out. We primarily our government is funded from our GET tax, which is like a sales tax, which tourists pay a big portion of, and the transient accommodations tax, which is the tax on hotel rooms and VRBOs and places to stay. And every month that the state's not collecting those is blowing a huge hole in the state budget. And there's already been a huge pushback, from state workers and other folks saying that they don't want to see their pay cut or have furloughs. And there's no way the state can sustain spending the money that they're planning to spend for the rest of the year. Every single day that the state is shut down and the tourists aren't here spending money, it's going to cause a crisis in government quicker than anything else. And that's going to be something they're going to have to be forced to address.
Yeah, and look, this what's sort of comforting to me is that this travel thing is not just a Hawaii problem, right? Getting on airplanes is not just a Hawaii problem, and I have to believe that there's billions and billions of dollars right now being held up in the airline industry and the worldwide. So they've got to be thinking about what they're doing about this. There's no way it's just us who is trying to figure this out. Air travel is going to be different. That is for darn sure. I don't know about you guys, but there's no way I'm getting on a plane for 8 hours with stuff full of people sneezing and coughing. At least at this point, Scott.
I mean, yeah, travel is big for me. I usually do somewhere between 6 and 8 trips a year. It's something I like to do. And that's the last thing on my mind at this point. So I also think about it as, okay, travel or going on vacation is also a luxury. It's not something that's a necessity. And I feel like we're kind of in survival mode right now. So you go inward and you look to cut costs and things like that. Travel is probably one of those things that starts to, at least goes by the wayside for a little while. So at what point do people also feel comfortable to do the travel, and when do they get back to an economic position where they're comfortable also to be able to afford to do the travel because it is a luxury? Those are all the factors, that are coming into this as well.
Yeah, it sure is. Hey, let's kind of break up the conversation a little bit with something a little bit different here. So this was from Henry from Houston, Texas. He had sent us a question on the via the form, and he said, "I've heard that without photovoltaic cells, the electric bill can exceed $500 a month. So leasing or owning these cells is almost a necessity. Is that true?" So this came in as an Oahu question. It probably applies to both. But Scott, why don't you kind of start this one off?
Yeah, as far as a necessity, not necessarily. I mean, if you go back 10 years ago, nobody had PV more or less, and we were paying our electric bill how it came out. But I have clients out in Eva Beach, which that's a large area, that Eva Beach kind of Eva Plain area where you get a lot of sun and things. But our electricity comes mainly from oil that we bring in. So we do have higher utility rates. So anytime you can reduce that electric bill by doing PV to a bare minimum, that's basically an ongoing monthly operating expense that doesn't go away. It's definitely a good thing and would be recommended. It's an investment. Right now, they still have the tax credits. Last year was at 30% from Fed. this year is 26%, and it's going to start ratcheting down. So the sooner somebody makes that investment, the better they can pay for the system and then still get some of the tax credit, not only on the federal side, but on the state side. So it makes it more beneficial. But yeah, I have clients in Eva Beach that their electric bill ranges between $300 and $600 a month. I have a client actually in Kahala who's got a grand piano where they have to have the inside of their home, and it's 5,000 square feet. It has to be climatized. So they're constantly running it. So they install PV to minimize that bill. The first month they moved in, it was $1,500. So they did it, and they did it with the battery backup system, because that's the other element was HECO started to eliminate the net metering several years ago, and it started to reduce. So now you're starting to see people go to the battery backups, which adds an expense to that system. But overall, it's going to add value to your home. You're going to get the tax credit. And then if you ever go to sell it, the next person is going to benefit from it. It's definitely an added benefit to your home. Not necessarily a necessity, but if you can afford the investment, it's definitely a good way to go to reduce those monthly expenses.
So Dylan, when someone when you're talking to buyers or sellers and they're asking you, hey, well, Kona's got like crazy sunshine like all the time, right? It's always, especially now with the volcano, with its strange things have occurred with the volcano. It's sunnier than ever. What's your advice to people as far as building photovoltaic cells on their roof? Is it worth it? Is it something that they should to look into? When would you not want to do it? When would you want to do it? How do you sort of guide them through that?
Yeah, solar is a dynamic discussion really based upon a couple of different things. The first one is what system. All systems are not the same, right? And people think of solar in this conceptual sense that it generates energy, but there's lease systems and there's lots of different lease programs. There's also, like Scott mentioned, the net metering program, which is probably the best system. And because it's also been limited here on the Big Island, if you have it on your roof, it's a agreement with the power company that when you generate power, you put it on the grid, and then when you use power, you take it off the grid, and whatever you net use above what you produce is what you pay for. And a lot of times, if you have enough panels, you always produce more than you use, and so your electric bill is like $27 a month, just the cost to be hooked up to the grid. So it's a really good system. The downside to that system is you had to pay for it up front. It could be a $25,000 or $30,000 system to install that. So one thing that you want to really look at in terms of solar is, what is your long-term plan with the home and your life plan? If you're only going to be in the home the 3 to 5 years, you don't want to spend $30,000 to put solar on your roof to save $100 a month, because you're only going to save $3,600 over the course of 3 years, right? So the net benefit, economic benefit, doesn't really make sense. You're better off spending $100 or $200 more on regular electricity than that huge upfront cost. On the flip side, if it's going to be a lease system and there's no upfront cost, and you're gonna have X amount of savings over the course of the life of you being there, and you plan to be in the house 20 or 30 years, then it makes absolute sense. It's totally something you should do. So you really want to weigh all those different options and what your plan is long term, and figure out if it makes sense, if it nets out to be a cost savings to you.
Thanks, Dylan. That's a great response. I was just, as the two of you guys were thinking, I'm going to apologize in advance. I got to do this. I got to give a great shout out to the two of you guys for being here, because this has been such a rich and informative kind of a discussion. It's really great having you guys here, and I just really want to thank you both. You guys are just it's totally awesome, and I hope this has been a great way to kind of put the face behind the team that we got building over. So thank you guys both for doing this. There's a little bit of a we touched on this a little bit earlier, but let's just kind of hit it and kind of see how we kind of go for it. So John Rodriguez says, how's the job market being affected, and what are the steps being taken to make Hawaii profitable in alternative ways to reduce long-term negative impacts on Native communities? Well, I'll take that one first. Right now, frankly, our government's doing absolutely nothing. That's what our government's doing. Absolutely nothing. They're kind of frozen in place. I just had an incredibly scary conversation yesterday with a lobbyist who knows like everybody inside the political parties, especially a hardcore Democrat, been for decades, knows everybody, involved with everything, watches the legislature like a hawk, is a paid lobbyist on top of it, watches the hearings. And so I asked her, I said, hey, what's your take on all this? What's kind of going on? And she basically said, look, they're completely internally focused right now. They're worried about budgets. Dylan, as your point, they see general excise tax revenue going, to like next to zero, which is what the state lives on. They're seeing, massive cuts, massive loss of revenue. So they're internally focused. They're going for federal bailouts. They're trying to figure out how they're going to make the whole thing work. And so business community, jobs, small business, who are they? They have no idea whatsoever. That's kind of what I've kind of been catching. Dylan, you've I don't know if you still have your hands in politics the way we used to back in the old days, but what's your sense of kind of what have you been hearing through your back channels?
The scary thing is and this is a whole separate show.
Yeah, I know we're gonna go off the deep end over here, but yeah, we'll make it quick.
System here is a great example of how if you don't have balance, you fail. And it's the case, you look across the country, really the countries that are the states that are doing the best right now are the ones with strong competitive systems where you don't have complete ownership over the system by one side or the other. And one of the things that really is going to hamstring us is most of the politicians in our state are completely beholden to the public sector and private sector unions, which have a certain interest to protect their workers, which is exactly what they're designed to do. But when that's the case, you have no incentive or backbone to do the right thing, because that's the only reason you get reelected is because these people give you money and that they get their members to vote for you. And the reality is, my wife's a school teacher and I get it, she's a government worker, but we can't keep the government shut down, the economy shut down, and expect that we're going to pay every single government worker their full salary for the rest of the year. It's just, there's no way you can do it. If you're a business owner, they don't have the choice to keep their workers on. They had to lay people off in mass because their revenues went to zero. And the state is the same thing. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they deal with that, because raising taxes on tourists, which is what we do every year to close the budget gap, isn't going to be an option this year if tourists aren't here. So they're really going to have to rethink what they do. And people are really going to have to rethink who they vote for. And that's hopefully a larger positive impact from this, as people really examine. I tell people, that are upset with our governor, we had 4 opportunities to vote him out. In each Democratic primary, he was challenged by a strong challenger, and there was a general election where he had a strong Republican challenger. And in all four elections, he won pretty overwhelmingly. So we made the decision to put him there. So, we can't be that upset about it.
And I'm going to try to kind of veer clear of politics. So thanks, Dylan, for walking the edge with me. We don't want to, my personal goal here is to have everyone guessing whether I'm a Republican or Democrat, because I just, anyway, Scott, what's your take on kind of that initial question, sort of like which is, the job market being taken, and what's kind of being done to kind of help Hawaii kind of be profitable, or alternatives and things of that nature?
Yeah, there's 2 things there. Obviously, from the impact has been 37% unemployment, right? And that's, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the highest in the U.S. right now, and we're very tourism based.
Right.
But I think what's going to happen now, and when I look at it from a conceptual standpoint, it's the same thing that each individual is doing, which is they're focusing inward, looking at their expenses right now, and going, okay, where do I need to cut expenses? Where do I need to get into survival mode, which is the same thing that the state's going to do. And so, especially with a state like Hawaii, it gets really hard to convince them that now's the time to invest when things could be more affordable to do the investment. And even if we're going to try to diversify, that takes years to do and years of planning. It's not something that you can just come up with an idea, flip the switch, and get moving in that direction. So I don't see it happening during this time frame of this downturn. It's got to be something that, yes, the light bulb goes off now. You start to do the research and the planning and the implementing, which it should have been going on a long time before now anyway. And then down the road, you start to execute.
Yeah, look, this whole diversification thing, I've been a member of the tech. I'm in the tech industry, been with tech industry since the very beginning, 35 plus years right now. Guess what the number one theme has been every single year since I got here? How are we going to diversify with technology? Well, guess what? It's never happened. And there's a whole lot of reasons why, like you said, Dylan, it's a whole other broadcast. And I don't even know if anybody even wants that broadcast. But diversification has been tried. There's a bunch of reasons why it hasn't worked. And this goes back to what I said earlier, and I do have to respond over here. So Carmita says, how rude, you're saying rich people are the only quality people. Well, look, just let me respond to that real quick. First of all, I didn't say only rich people are quality people. I had nothing to say about people whatsoever. What I did say is this is an opportunity for Hawaii to become even more expensive and go way upscale in the industry. We should charge a lot more for what we do. Therefore, we could reduce the amount of visitors. We can live by with a reduced visitor count, yet spending more. Quality of life improves for everybody. Salaries improve actually for everybody. Hotel workers get paid more. Everyone gets paid more because we've increased the price of the product. And that's what I meant by that. And I had no reflection whatsoever on people. Okay, let's kind of start to close this up. We got about 15 minutes, so we don't need to stay for 15 minutes. But I wanted to give you both an opportunity to kind of and give some kind of either a closing statement, or is there anything here that we should have addressed, that we didn't address, that we didn't talk about, that you want to share? Dylan, why don't we start with you? What, if anything, number one, what do you want to say, or number two, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember here is, of course, we don't know, we keep saying we don't know what's going to happen, but the reality is, I'm a student of history, and if you look back over the last 60 years of economic data, we've been through rough patches before. Went through a really bad recession 10 years ago. And the reality with the real estate market, bringing it back to real estate, is there's really only been one significant drop in real estate values, and that was in the 2008-9 crisis, because there was a lot of other extenuating circumstances with the mortgage industry and the housing bubble, where people were getting loans where they shouldn't have, and that a lot of that has been corrected. And so when that wasn't a factor in previous recessions, you saw the economy drop off a little bit, but the housing prices kind of plateau and then continue to go back up. So regardless of what happens, especially in a market like Hawaii with a really limited inventory, I would say it's not smart to wait for some 25% drop in prices and get a great deal. I don't think that's going to happen just because of the limited supply. And the reality is, for me personally, and I'm seeing, talking to my colleagues here, sure, things have slowed down. We don't have that visitor demand in terms of people buying, but I just put another condo into escrow yesterday, almost full price cash. I mean, the buyers are here, and if they're here and they need to buy and they need to live, they're still going to buy. And for the sellers, with, like Scott said earlier, there's 40-50% drop off in the number of listings. There's a lot less competition. So I'm telling people, you got nothing to lose. You're going to be working off of comps from 6 months ago, and there are still people here looking to buy, and you have half as many homes to compete against. Why not try? There's no point in sitting on your hands and feeling bad about yourself because this whole thing is going on. We got to move on with our lives, and we'll get through this. We'll come out of it. And I don't think there's a reason to believe that there's going to be some huge drop in values that we all need to be really worried about here in the near future.
Yeah, great. Scott, what do you want to share that hasn't been shared, or bring up that hasn't been brought up, or anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. For one, when it comes to a shift in the market, I always tell people, you don't try to time the market. You look for the opportunity that's in that market. And there's plenty of opportunities that come up, say now, during this time frame. And if you're waiting for an absolute bottom on overall market prices, you're going to miss the individual opportunity that comes up in front of you. You got to find the right opportunity and go after it, and not worry about the total market movement. What I'm doing, or what we're doing right now with my investment group and with me, is, hey, we've moved to cash. We're looking for the opportunities. They will come up. We're willing to buy tomorrow. We're willing to buy several months from now. I mean, we wrote buy-side offers where I was competing with 7 other people 2 weeks ago. I just showed property yesterday. I got a text message this morning. Hey, we're reviewing offers at 3 p.m. today. I have multiple offers. So there's a buyer pool that's already there. So don't expect this massive drop off. Do I think we're going to have softness? Yes. And there will be opportunities from it, and interest rates are at historic lows. So this will be a good time, because we typically double in sales price over a 10-year cycle. And the bigger thing with Hawaii is, you got to understand, we're limited in land. you can't go any further out than the shoreline to build a new home. You live in Phoenix, you go another half-mile out, that new subdivision is now the new one and yours is the old one. That doesn't happen here. Diamond Head's always going to be Diamond Head. Eva's always going to be Eva. We're limited in land. And that's one of the biggest drivers with Hawaii real estate. And it's why me and my family and the others invest here, is because our pricing over the long run, when you hold, outperforms most places in the mainland because we're so supply restricted. And I look at this as like one of the better opportunities to get in from the sell side. Yeah, okay, if I have time to sit. So this is a prime example of the discussion I just had with a client in Hawaii Kai. Do we come on the market? When do we come on the market? Okay, we're looking at trading up. All right, let's go on now. We sell based off those last comps. There's not a lot of competition. We can sell quickly. You're sitting cash. Okay, if the market adjusts some, great. But let's say prices do drop 5%. If they drop 5% on $1 million and you're trading up, this is just trading over in the market. That's what a $50,000 drop, and you're trading up to $2 million, and that drops 5%. That's $100,000. Guess what? You just won. You just made $50,000 by doing it now, right? Doing it during this time frame, right? And if they don't, you've gotten out and freed up your capital, and now you can go into a competing situation where you're not contingent a sale, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally it. Yeah. So, any kind of final closing thoughts? Closing thoughts, Dylan or Scott?
Yeah. One closing thought, especially for sellers right now. And I just put my house on the market 2 weeks ago. So, I had to take my own advice. You don't ever want to chase a market down, right? So yeah, there's going to be some softening here. There's some uncertainty. Don't say I'm going to price my house 10% above market value so I can now negotiate down, right? I mean, it's not a good time to do that. And if you want to sell, there are buyers out there who will buy, but buying and selling is still about price. And no magic marketing in the world is going to sell a house that's overpriced. So that's something that you really want to consider. Is there are people who will buy right now, but you have to be reasonable on price and be smart about it. And don't think that you're in the market 6 months ago, because it's not anymore. But at the same time, it could be worse here in 6 months. So you don't want to put your house on the market overpriced and then continue to drop it and chase the market down when the market value is here, but you're up here and you keep trying to come down and you're not catching up to it. So that's the biggest thing for sellers right now to consider.
Yeah. It's a great point. So look, folks, as we're coming to a close over here, I wanted to thank you all for attending. We got like 22 people live watching. I've had my great host, co-host over here, guests, and look, I put a link in the comments. I put a link to the form that we have if you want us to help you find a home in Hawaii. You've kind of heard these guys, and there's now a face behind it. Clearly it's a great team. So let us know if you need anything. The website will. This is a good thing. We'll see. Maybe we may do this again, right, guys? I mean, we might come back again.
We have some extra time nowadays. So if people want to do it, we'll do it. And I just wanted to thank you also, Peter, for the great service you're providing to everybody. You put a great face on Hawaii. If you haven't checked out livinginhawaii.com, there are great videos of not only beautiful scenery, but really good advice from somebody who knows and loves Hawaii deeply. And I really appreciate all that you do to spread that word.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. Scott's been great having you part of the team. I'm happy to have known both you guys for over 10 years at a crack. And we'll definitely kind of there's more to come, and more fun to be having. I think everybody really liked these. Getting some great comments here. Katie, of course, Suzanne, Alex. So it's really great. It's been great having you. It's been a lot of fun. And I guess I'm gonna give everybody the old aloha shaka, and we'll see you guys again. Have a great one, folks. Enjoy. Stay safe.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Aloha.